Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's weather chat. I'm meteorologist Timmy Albertson. Well, it's been a while since we've done our last weather chat here. Really, there just hasn't been a whole lot going on. Now, mind you, there was some snow across parts of Ohio the other day, and we do have some passing systems here and there. But all things considered, it's been a relatively quiet winter across a good portion of the U.S. However, even on the quietest winters, there's at least sometimes still some activity depending upon where you are. And a lot of times we can see that up around the Pacific Northwest where they get those lows coming off the Pacific coast there, sometimes producing some rain and some snow. And if conditions are right, sometimes a little bit in the way of some severe weather. Now, we don't typically talk about severe weather out in places like the Central Valley of California, but believe it or not, under the right circumstances, yes, it can happen. As a matter of fact, sometimes they are known to get these little tornado events, if that makes any sense. Not normally anything big, but just these little spin up tornadoes, more or less, and especially around parts of the Central Valley. Some of that has to do with the way the topography is situated. It produces a little bit of some wind shear there, as well as, just those systems coming off the coast anyway. So, right now, in terms of thunderstorm activity, well, that's actually one of the active places we got right now. Let's go over to California here, take a look at what's going on there. No, we got ourselves a little bit of some storms making their way north of the Sacramento area. Some of these little storms here are producing some little bit of hail here, but if you look at the surface temperatures here, we're only looking into about the upper 50s, lower 60s. So naturally, the freezing level probably isn't too much higher than that. So that being said, these aren't like the big hail producing storms that we see across the Great Plains, but just enough to kind of get things going. And believe it or not, some of these storms, just there has been enough low level wind shear with the way things are set up right now. Some of these storms have kind of shown at least a little bit of some faint rotation. And when I say faint rotation, I'm not talking very strong rotation signatures, but at least that there is a little bit of something going on there. In case in point, we can kind of see a little bit of a notch right around here with this storm. If we look over to this radar image, that's your velocity radar image. Again, reds are winds going away from the radar, greens are winds going towards the radar. Not the strongest setup there, but there's at least a couple little hints here and there, but nothing too unusual. Nonetheless, a little severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect for another 33 minutes. We'll see if that carries on though. But for locally gusty winds around 60 miles an hour, and hail up to about 1 inch in diameter. It does actually have the Trento tag possible with it, but all things considered, again, typically in these type of setups, when there are the Trentos, they tend not to be very strong, very just brief, short-lived. It's kind of a setup there. But again, not necessarily normal, but also not unusual in this part of California, especially during this time of the year. Now, also because there's so much in the way of topography differences in this part of California, I mean, we're going back into the Sierra Nevadas over here. Well, we got ourselves some winter storm warnings that are actually in effect. As a matter of fact, they are expecting snowfall accumulations of about, anywhere from 3 to 8 inches, with maybe some accumulations of around 14 inches of snow. Now, mind you, this is not, necessarily, this is not what we would see across Great Plains and in the parts of the, Midwest in terms of snowfall. A lot of this just has to do with orographic lift, with the way that air is coming off the ocean and it's running into the mountains. Again, it has a lot of moisture with it. It gets lifted up as it tries to go over those mountains, and that causes it to cool and condense. So naturally, a lot of times when we have these systems this time of the year, again, we just tend to get these pretty decent snowfall events across some of the higher elevations there. Overall, though, that's kind of the bulk of the activity right now across the U.S. Otherwise, it's pretty quiet. As a matter of fact, we're not really seeing a whole lot of active weather right now across any part of the Midwest. In fact, even if we look over towards our usual snowbelt areas this evening, it is very quiet there. Winds are coming out of the northeast. Temperatures across northern Ohio vary a little bit. They're in the lower 30s around northeast Ohio, but into the lower 40s up around northwestern Ohio. If we go a little further off towards our east, around the around parts of upstate New York here, around the Syracuse area, again, they're pretty quiet too. Temperatures there are a little bit cooler, sitting in the teens right now, with dew points in the single digits. They'll probably try dropping a little bit more. Again, they did have some snow a couple days ago, and so that's kind of helping at least a little bit of that activity. But all things considered, though, it's pretty quiet. That's the highlight of the active weather right now. Again, a couple little thunderstorms around parts of the northern Central Valley of California. Other than that, it's pretty quiet. Now, let's take a look here up at our friends for Alaska. Why not? They got a little winter storm warning there. Looks like they got some snow coming off there, not too far away from Nome, Alaska. And there's a couple little winter storm warnings still in effect. Those winds are gusting actually pretty good, about 30 miles an hour. Let's take a look here. At this particular airport. I'm not sure what town this is, but 37-mile-an-hour sustained winds gusting up to about 46 miles an hour. So there's at least some winter right there. Temperatures, though, about 25 degrees. There's also a little bit of freezing fog with that, and visibility is pretty much zero. Let's take a look a little bit further over here towards the east. Again, temperature there about 13 degrees. Winds sustained about 39 miles an hour. Whew, that's probably putting that wind chill down pretty low. So just another typical day up there in Alaska. There's where your winter is. But what about everywhere else? Well, we really haven't had much going on. And unfortunately, especially up across parts of the upper Midwest, this sets up not a very good situation in the middle of winter. Now, we've talked about this before, where, uh, typically you need snow for a good cold air mass. Well, we haven't had any snow, so the ground's barren. So there's nothing really to reflect that incoming heat coming from the sun. And that just kind of continues this loop and loop and loop and loop, and we just really haven't gotten anything up here in the upper Midwest. We did have winter for a couple of weeks in mid-January, but that was really about it. Now it's just kind of like perpetual spring, or honestly, you could argue it's like perpetual November, because really we hit November and we've just kind of coasted ever since then. So again, pretty mild out across parts of the upper Midwest. As a matter of fact, tomorrow what we'll probably do is we're actually going to take a look here at some of the numbers. Some of these places, even like Fargo, International Falls, have just been incredibly above average so far this winter. Haven't really seen much in the way of snow, and again, it just kind of continues that cycle of keeping things just a little bit too warm. Like I said, we have no snow cover right here, which is incredibly unusual, especially for this time of the year. All right, so what are we going to be expecting as we go through the next couple of days? Let's take a good look here really quickly at one of our forecast models here, just kind of give you a rundown of what we're expecting, and that is nothing much. All right, maybe that's not exactly correct. So here's that area of high pressure right now at across parts of the eastern U.S. It'll begin to work its way into New England, maybe intensifying a bit more, but then eventually heading out into the Canadian Maritimes. We'll see kind of this little series of these little waves of low pressure, kind of a little bit of a frontal boundary, trying to move across the upper Midwest, but not a lot of moisture associated with them. Another long story short, though, eventually we will see another area of low pressure trying to develop out of Oklahoma, but that thing kind of quickly gets caught up in another system that'll be tracking its way across the Canadian prairies and eventually into Ontario. And we can just kind of see that's probably going to produce somewhat of a little bit of a rain event across parts of the eastern U.S. So that'll be something that we'll certainly keep an eye on as we head towards the end of the week. Otherwise, pretty quiet, not really much going on. So yeah, that's about it, really. Alrighty, everyone. Well, with that in mind here, thank you all very much for taking time to join me here. We'll be back tomorrow evening. We'll take another little look at the weather. We'll see what else is going on. And otherwise than that, though, like I said, kind of a quiet pattern, and that's been the case the past couple of weeks, and will probably continue to be the case with the way things are looking. Not really good if you're trying to do a weather chat show, but hey, we make it work. Alrighty, everyone. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow evening. Until that time, keep enjoying that weather.